We're just going to talk about some of the ways to keep the body healthy, to try to prevent cancer, to try to prevent recurrence, and some of the studies around that. I'm not just focusing on breast cancer. I'll talk about breast cancer, but really we're going to talk about a variety of different kinds of cancer. And I just want to say before I begin, we don't totally know why cancer happens in the body. There are a lot of theories. There are some, obvious reasons, like people that smoke a lot of cigarettes, have more rates of lung cancer or esophageal cancer. There's a lot that we do know, but cancers happen spontaneously. So this talk is not to say anyone created their own cancer, but there's a lot of research about how we can reduce that risk. And we also know that when a person gets cancer, it involves the people in their lives. It involves their spouses, their children, their parents, their communities. And so the cancer survivorship experience really is the person that's going through the illness, but also their closest loved ones. For people that have completed maybe more complex cancer therapy, which is why it's so great, again, this cryoablation, because there aren't a lot of long-term side effects from this. But if, I have had patients that did get extensive radiation to the breast, and they got a secondary cancer from that. Long-term complications that could happen from cancer and cancer treatment. So there is a need to kind of stick with these people for the long haul, and that's something that I love doing. So breast cancer is the most common cancer in women. And why are breast and prostate cancers increasing? This is a big debate. Has it always been there, and did we really start imaging people all the time? We're doing mammograms annually on most women. Every other year is really the standard of care, but really most women want to do it every year is what I find. So are we just catching them earlier? Were they always there? We also have a baby boomer population, and age is the #1 risk factor for cancer. Just as we get older, our DNA begins to have issues. Things add up in our bodies. So age is another one. Our environment is changing faster than we can keep up with. It's really hard to pinpoint. We know there are some environmental toxins for sure that might correlate with cancer, but when we live in this milieu, it's hard to know. And then, of course, the change in the American body type. We have been getting more and more overweight for the last decade or two, and we know that that is correlated with lots of different kinds of cancers. 60 years ago, 70 years ago, they were doing these major deforming surgeries for very small cancers to women, and so it's just getting less and less invasive, thank goodness, as we're understanding not all cancer is the same. There are many kinds of cancer. What can we do? It's this idea of the soil and the seed. This concept was actually first published in a publication called The Lancet in the 1930s. It's not a new idea. It's kind of an idea, if you think about your body as the soil, little weeds pop up all the time. Little cancers or aberrant growth happens all the time. And our body's immune system actually goes after it and fights it. We don't usually think about cancer is an immune problem, and of course it's more complex than that, but now we know that we have immunotherapies that go after cancer, so there is definitely a huge part of the cancer issue has to do with immunity. And so when little things pop up, what we would love is for our immune system to find it and say, oh, something's wrong here, and then take care of it. So we know that nutrition is really important. I love talking about nutrition. I love plants, and so there's some very simple things to know. Nutrition has gotten complicated in America, maybe around the world. You'll go to the nutrition section of the bookstore, and there's like the paleo books, and there's the ketogenic books, and here's the vegan books, and here's the Mediterranean diet books, and it can be a little bewildering. We've kind of lost a lot of common sense about how to eat. I think partly it's because we come from a world of many different cultures have landed here in the United States, and then science kind of gets in the mix, and there's not a consensus, but I will just say over and over again, a plant, it doesn't have to be a vegetarian or a vegan diet, but a plant-forward diet with real food has never gone out of style. That continues to be the best way to eat. These are the Clean 15. So there are a number of foods that you don't have to do it, because it can get a little weird. If you listen to this lecture, you can leave paranoid and say, oh gosh, how am I going to survive in this chemical-ridden world? And we do have to navigate. We have to feel comfortable going to friends' houses or restaurants to eat. So there is a way to navigate this in a really practical way. So this is the anti-inflammatory dietary pyramid. This is created by one of my mentors, Dr. Andrew Weil. When I was growing up, the dietary pyramid, like in the 1980s, looked very different than this. It was, I think on the bottom, it was carbs, carbohydrates, but mostly like, the whole cereal for breakfast thing, which is beginning to go out of style a little bit, thank goodness. Well, for me, thank goodness, because that turns into sugar in your body. So this is a different version of it. So he kind of took the Mediterranean diet, which is really one of the healthiest way to eat, and blended it with some Japanese ingredients that includes like some seaweed, some Asian mushrooms. And that's because when you look at areas in the world called blue zones, these are areas in the world where people are living the longest and the wellest. It's one way to study nutrition. There are lots of ways to study nutrition. These are some of the commonalities. The way cancer metabolizes sugar really does preferentially go for glucose. And it wants that high energy, and it uses it in a very particular way. That doesn't mean don't trust the FDA, who's really trying to bring up the health of our country, or public health organizations who really care about public health. But like the sugar lobby and like these different lobbies, we really have to kind of be careful about who's making our food guidelines and where are they coming from, and so how do we navigate this? Because there's money to be made, and whenever there's money to be made, that always seems to be more important than health. Things that we can do in the body. I have seen this observationally. When I talked about those people that I cared for that had metastatic lung or breast cancer for 10 years, now the treatments they were on mattered, especially for lung cancer. But I will tell you that how much they exercised really made a difference with how much these people thrive. Exercise helps us live longer. It helps us fight cancer. Exercise has actual cancer-fighting properties in the body. And the way it has actual cancer-fighting properties, exercise changes our hormones in our bodies. Not only does it help us lose weight and tone things up, and when we tone things up, when we lose body fat, fat is actually kind of active in the body, and it secretes estrogen. So that's one of the issues with like having extra fat on us, and uterine cancer, for instance, or breast cancer, a few other things, is that estrogenic thing. So not only does it do that, exercise also changes some of the inflammatory factors in our bodies, and that helps us fight cancer in its own way. So there are a lot of different things that are happening. Where we live and how we live, and the stress that's in our bodies, and how cluttered our minds and our external environments can be. They have studied that, so there's a hormone called cortisol, which is one of our stress hormones. When we are in kind of like cluttered, crazy environments, our stress levels go up, and it can be measured. And when our stress level goes up, our immune system goes down, if it's chronically up. Maybe not if it's just up for a few minutes where you try to cross the street and you're a little stressed about getting to the other side. But if it stays up, like most of our does, that helps depress the immune system. And the contrary side to that is when you're even just sitting and looking at a beautiful view, the cortisol levels go down. So taking that time to really just pause and be in a surrounding that calms us and makes us feel good is good for the immune system. So things that we've kind of always known were good for us, now we study them, because that's what scientists do. They 20 minutes of some kind of prayer or contemplation daily, and that can actually include something that's moving, like a walking meditation, Tai Chi, yoga, anything that kind of gets us out of ourselves and into something bigger. Even if that something is just breathing, it just quiets down the mind. Thinking takes energy. And when we can quiet it down, our body can focus on the unseen things like digestion and the immune system. Not to mention some of the other, maybe spiritual benefits we might get from that 20 minutes of contemplation a day. But there are now, we've learned that there are some very known chemical, that like hormonal and inflammatory benefits to about 20 minutes a day. They also did some kind of interesting studies on prayer, where they found that when you these are small studies, but when you pray for somebody that you don't know, sometimes their outcomes improve. So these are these kind of interesting, kind of a little more woo-woo out there, but people are studying these things to figure out, is there some kind of vibrational thing, are we more than just a solid body? And the final thing, it says love yourself. That's because a lot of people that I work with that have had cancer begin to not trust themselves anymore. They don't trust their bodies anymore, especially and it's scary. And so just re-finding that trust and re-knowing that, your body's got this and you still have a lot of resilience within you. So that's just another part of this path, because we have to keep going.